Hello, I'm David Sparks and welcome to the fourth edition of the OmniFocus Field Guide. I am passionate about OmniFocus because this application has had a huge impact on my life. I do a lot of things. I run a small business, I'm a dad, I used to be a trial lawyer, and OmniFocus has been the tool to help me pull it all off. Having a powerful task management system is like having the wind at your back as you work through your day. Indeed, OmniFocus helps you make the things that you love most. Now, this course is designed to help everyone. We're going to start with beginners, but by the end, we're going to get to the advanced materials. I don't want to just explain how to use this application, but I want to explain why, because there's a lot to task management these days, and OmniFocus can be there for you no matter what choices you make. We're going to learn all the features, but we're going to go even deeper and cover systems and techniques to make task management easier in the modern world. Now, we've got a lot to cover. We're going to go through it all in this course. It's a long course, but by the end, I want you to be a powerful task manager, and you're going to be able to do that with OmniFocus. My goal is to make you a pro at this application. OmniFocus 4 is a task manager built by the Omni Group for the Mac, iPad, and iPhone. OmniFocus is now over 15 years old, but it actually started with an offshoot from the Omni Outliner application called Kinkless GTD that was pioneered by Ethan Schoonover. I've been using it since back in those days. While OmniFocus has deep roots with David Allen's Getting Things Done systems, it's really evolved beyond that. At this point, I believe OmniFocus to be system agnostic. You can run any task system in OmniFocus. That's one of the big advantages of this new fourth version. In the years since OmniFocus first released, it's grown a lot. First, it expanded to the iPhone and the iPad. In fact, OmniFocus for iPhone was the very first application I ever purchased in the App Store for my iPhone. Then OmniFocus expanded to the web, so you can use it on any computer with a web browser. Most recently, the Omni Group released a native version of OmniFocus on Vision OS for Apple's Vision Pro headset. With this fourth version, OmniFocus also got easier to use with an easier on-ramp and easier tools for people who don't want to go super deep with the application. But then for those who want to go into the deep end, OmniFocus still has all those great power features we love, like tags, review, and even more powerful automation. I'm going to cover all of that in this course. The thing is that OmniFocus has so many different tools and methods for you to manage your tasks that the application can be bent to your will. Whether you want to focus on dates or flags or tags or any mechanism for organizing your tasks, you can make that happen with OmniFocus. Indeed, one of the big changes with this fourth edition of the OmniFocus Field Guide is I have a lot of material talking about different strategies and systems for organizing and managing your tasks using different pieces of OmniFocus. Moreover, for the Plus edition of this course, there's an extended 6-part webinar series where we'll go even deeper. There's a lot to learn, but by the end of this course, you're going to be an expert at OmniFocus. So let's get started. One of the reasons I think OmniFocus does such a good job at managing tasks is the love and detail put into the interface. So let's take a minute to do a tour of the interface of OmniFocus on the Mac. Perhaps the most important piece of the interface is the outline. You can see here the outline is the center of the interface, and it's the actual list of tasks you have. Now, what's represented in the outline depends on which perspective or view you're showing in OmniFocus. For instance, I could go down here and say, show me a list of projects that are due for review. I don't currently have any, but I'm currently showing this one called Due, which is a custom perspective I've created. It's the things I really want to try and get done today. But you can customize that view even more ways. There's a view button here, and I'm going to do a separate video on this later, but just to give you a brief glimpse, I could say group all of these tasks by the project they're in, and then you'll see that it groups them by the project. To further break down the outline view, each row has multiple elements. Starting on the left side, you see there's this little circle. They call that the status circle, and it changes depending on what it is. And we've got a separate video explaining the status circle further. later, but just to let you know, it changes. For instance, if I were to flag this item, you'll see that it turns orange. Going over to the left side of the screen, you have a perspective bar that has a bunch of different perspectives that I've designated. And as we go through the course, I'll teach you how to do that yourself. But if you wanted to see, just for instance, items on your forecast, you could press this button. Or if you want to see the due perspective, you could press this button. All of this stuff can vary depending on how you set the perspectives up. This is the power of OmniFocus. Once you figure this out, it makes it very quick to get to just the tasks you need. There's also a sidebar, which is currently hidden. I can show it by hitting the sidebar button. And the sidebar shows you a different outline or organization of the tasks that you have in the outline. In this case, it's showing them by tag. Across the top of OmniFocus, you've got the toolbar. The very first button is the sidebar button, which I just showed you. And then next to that, you've got backward and forward buttons. This allows you to navigate between your previous locations in OmniFocus, so you can go backward and forward between views. Next to that, you've got the view button, and I have already used that once in this video. This is a very useful tool to change the view of your outline. In addition, in the center of the toolbar, you've got buttons to create a new action, a quick entry, or enter focus mode. OmniFocus is a very powerful search function. You can find anything in OmniFocus very quickly. And finally is the inspector button, which toggles the inspector on the right side. That's this section. You can see the inspector is currently aligned to this selected task. You can toggle the inspector by pushing this button. Moving down to the bottom of the inspector, you'll see this little ellipsis button. This allows you to edit what's shown in the inspector, and I'll cover that later. So that's a good general overview of the OmniFocus interface. As we go through the course, you're going to master this and be able to customize it to make it work exactly the way you want to. And at the end of the day, that's the goal with OmniFocus, to have it give you just the tasks you need, just when you need them. I've been using OmniFocus since before it was an official application. For over 15 years now, I've been running my tasks out of OmniFocus, and this is the 4th version of the app and the 4th version of this field guide. Something that always bugged me in prior versions was the fact that I had to make this small sample size of data for training the application. I feel like to get the most out of the application, you need to understand that it can run on a big data set. And I've always wanted to use my personal data set for the field guide, but that was never possible because I was a practicing attorney and I had a bunch of client data in there. Well, now I'm a full-time MacSparky, and that means I can use my full data set here. So I'm going to be using all of my data throughout this course. I hope that gives you a better idea of exactly how powerful OmniFocus is. You're going to be seeing little bits of it that relate to some of my other field guides at the same time. For example, in the productivity field guide, I talk about my roles. Well, you'll see those are showing up throughout my OmniFocus data as well. But that's okay. The real thing here is I want you to see someone using OmniFocus with a large data set so you can understand that you can build your own out just as easily. One of the most important features of a task manager is quick and easy capture. And by that I mean when you have an idea for a task, it gets into the task manager as quickly as possible. In my opinion, OmniFocus is probably the best app for this. The application's been around a long time, so the developers have solved every problem with quick capture. In this section, I'm going to go over all the varied ways you can add tasks and ideas to OmniFocus. There's a lot of them, so let's get started. So let's start with capture on the Mac. There are a lot of ways to capture tasks for OmniFocus, both in the application and outside the application. I'm going to cover both of them in this video, so buckle up. Okay, so we've got the inbox showing here in OmniFocus, and I want to add a task to it quickly. I can use this quick entry method, and this is the built-in quick entry mechanism in OmniFocus. It's tied to a keyboard shortcut, Control Option Space, and then it opens up. You can see there it is, the quick entry box. I'm going to do a secret layer under my house, so I want to research secret layer designs. And if I just hit the Enter key, it saves it, and you can see it just added it to my inbox. Quick Entry works throughout the Mac. You don't have to have OmniFocus open as your primary app in order to use it. For example, now I have Safari open in the front of my window, and if I want to add a note to OmniFocus, all I can do again is Control-Option-Space, and then it opens up again. And I can also say, well, also when I go to Home Depot, I need to buy a new garden hose. Now, if I go to OmniFocus, you'll see that that's been added to my inbox. The only thing you need in order for this quick entry to work is to have OmniFocus running. You can have it minimized, but it must be running for the quick entry to work. But that shouldn't be a problem. If you're using OmniFocus, just leave it running all day, keep it minimized, and you can be capturing to the inbox all day this way. I'm going to hit Control-Option-Space again to open the inbox, and you'll see there's more to this than just capturing the item itself. I'm going back to my secret layer. I'm going to say Find Secret Layer Architect. But if I hit the Tab key, you can see I can cycle through the various elements of this task. Project, tags, duration, defer dates, due dates, repeat dates, and notifications. All that can be controlled right here at the time I add the task. And I do this all the time when I'm using OmniFocus under fire. It's a great way to get things right where they belong without any difficulty. You can even add a note. Now you can customize this if you have the Pro version of OmniFocus with this little setting button here, and you can choose whether you use the default, fluid, or column layout, and then you can edit it here if you want. And you can see what we can edit the display and the editing fields, but I'm definitely getting ahead of myself on doing that. We're going to have instruction on how to do that later, but all of that stuff can be applied to the quick entry window. And you can see Find Secret Layer Architect now appears there as well. Just to give you another example, I'm going to hit Control-Option-Space again, and I'm going to add another item to this Home Depot shopping list. I'm going to say buy some flowers. Once I'm done with my secret layer, I don't want it to be dreary. We need some flowers. So I'll go here, and now I can select a project. I'm going to say Home Depot, and you can see OmniFocus found that the shopping list is there. And I'm going to hit Enter, and now it's in that shopping list for me. And when I'm done, if I hit Save, you'll see it's not in the inbox. It shows up on the Home Depot list. So I'm going to do the quick open, Command-O, and just say Home Depot. And there's that list, and you can see Buy Flowers shows up there. Now, there's one note I want to make here because it went to the Home Depot list. If you're doing this along with me, it may have stayed in your inbox, and that's because of a setting that I'm using. I like to have OmniFocus work and clean up the inbox item if it has a project selected. By default, it requires both a project and a tag. I'm going to be talking to you a lot about projects and tags later in the course. I am a big fan of both, but I feel like a project is enough to get a task filed. Sometimes it doesn't need a tag, so I've made this setting. Now, if you want to have tags on all your projects, you should leave it in the default. And by that, I mean you would select that it has both a project and a tag before it's allowed to leave the inbox. But you have options. You can make it a tag, a project, both, or either a project or a tag. For me, it has to have a project to leave the inbox, but not necessarily a tag. Now, the quick entry shortcut by default, once again, is Control-Option-Space. But if you don't like that, you can set your own. You can do that in the settings for the application. I'm going to hit Command, comma. And under the general settings, you see here, there is the spot where you enter a new shortcut for the quick entry bar. I'm going to leave it as is, but if you wanted to change it, you just click on it and then type in what you want to use. I'll use the same again, Control-Option-Space, and I'm set. A few more points on the quick entry on the Mac. I'm going to open it again. You can resize it if you want. I've got it pretty big here, but if you want to make it smaller, you can do that. OmniFocus will remember the size that you leave it. So I'm going to go ahead now and escape and then bring it up again, and you'll see it remembers the size. And in addition to the ability to add the various fields and tags, you can also add notes to an item. Just click this button right here, and you see that the note field opens up. so you can type in text notes along with it. You can also add attachments to that if you'd like. And then there's a flag here where you can make it a flagged item if you want. So gang, here's a wrinkle. While I'm recording this field guide, I got a jury summons from the County of Orange. They want me to appear for jury duty, and I really don't have time when they've set me up to do this. I've got a bunch of stuff going on. Where I live, you can request a deferment, and I just did that. But I need to make an entry in OmniFocus to remind me to follow up on this to make sure I got it. And that's a quick entry. So let me show you making one under fire. I just submitted my request for deferment. So I'm going to hit Control-Option-Space to bring it up. And I'm going to say, whoops, follow up on jury duty. And that is a personal business item, personal business. And I'm going to add a tag to this. I'm going to make that a bench item, which you'll learn all about later. I'll put a duration in, why not, 10 minutes. And I'm going to defer that until 1 week from now, so 1W. And some of this stuff may not make sense this early in the field guide, but this is how I would make a quick entry. Now I'll hit save, and it's in OmniFocus, and I don't need to worry about it until next week. In the last section, I explained capture, and I told you don't worry about processing. We'll talk about that later. Well, now it's later. In this section, we're going to go through the nitty-gritty of task processing with OmniFocus. And there are a lot of ways to index tasks with OmniFocus. You can use dates, flags, tags, and a whole bunch of other different ways to index your tag system. I don't use all of them, and I don't expect you to either. But what I would like to do in this section is teach them all to you so you can get a working knowledge of them, and then you can come up with a system that works good for you. Before taking on the various ways you can categorize tasks in OmniFocus, I want to take a moment to look at the inspector. It's going to be used throughout this section, so let's get familiar with it right now on the Mac. On the Mac, the inspector appears on the right side of the screen. You can access it by pushing the button here. You can also use the keyboard shortcut Option-Command-I to toggle it off and on. With version 4 of OmniFocus, the inspector lost a little bit of its importance. The Omni Group did such a good job of allowing you to edit tasks in the outline view that you don't need the inspector as much as you used to. In past versions, you did a lot of the editing of your task properties only in the inspector. That's just not the case anymore. However, the inspector is useful to give you an easy way to see every detail about a task, and also it's very useful for editing bulk tasks. With the inspector, you can see the complete status of any task or project. You can see I've got this mail drop task that I had created in a prior video. You can see the status of the project here, which really applies more to projects, but it can also apply to a task. You can see whether or not it's flagged. See, I can toggle that just by clicking the mouse button. I can see which project it's attached to, or I can assign it to a project just by typing one in. Another nice feature in the inspector is once you've assigned a task to a project, it will jump to the project, so you can go straight to it. To do that, you just click on this little arrow right next to the project name. This is also where you can see any assigned tags and change the tags if you'd like. You can see the defer date of a project, or you can click on the calendar to add a specific defer date. I'll go ahead and make this one today. Or you can change it. You can say make it in 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, or cancel the deferred date, or make it today just by clicking that button right there. And you have the same tool set with respect to making an item due or not. So we can say make it due today, 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, or just cancel the due date entirely, or also assign a specific date in the future. This is also where you set the repeat function. There's going to be a separate video on that, but if you click the box here, you can see it opens up to show you repeat functions. And that's really one of the nice things about the inspector is this progressive disclosure. It doesn't give you more information than you need, but any element or property you work on, the inspector will grow to give you whatever details you need to control that function. Next, you'll see any notes. If you have a note attached to it, it'll appear here. This can also be links and attachments, and you can add attachments right here in the inspector. In the capture chapter, I talked about adding attachments to items you capture on the iPhone or the iPad. Well, you can also do that in the inspector on the Mac. And finally, you've got this little ellipses or more button at the bottom. If you click that, it allows you to edit the inspector layout. And you can see it's showing me all of the values that appear in the default inspector layout. And you can see I've got quite a few unchecked. Let me go ahead and add a few in and explain. First one is project type. Now you're not going to see that because this isn't a project. Usually this shows up contextually, and we're going to talk all about project types in the project video. You can also add the estimated duration. This is a field that I traditionally haven't used, but I have started to use it increasingly over the last year. If you think this task is going to take 30 minutes, for example, you can just type 30M, and then it will give it a 30-minute time duration. One of the advantages of adding a duration is if you drag a task onto your calendar, particularly if it's in Fantastical or BusyCal, it will match the duration of that event to the time you've estimated. You can also have control for notifications here, so you can add specific notifications. If you travel a lot and you want to have time zones, you can do that. This is a feature that has been asked for years in OmniFocus, where you can have a floating or fixed time zone. So when you travel, do you want your time zones to stick with the location you left, or do you want them to match the location you're at? You've got a trigger for that now here in the inspector. You can show whether or not an item is completed. You can show whether or not the item is dropped. And then you can also have review. Review is another feature that only applies to projects. We're going to come back to that later in a separate video. And you can also add the date that it has been added or changed. It gives you some details here at the bottom. This was added on March 15th and then changed today, March 16th at 15:05. So as you can see, there's a lot you can do with this inspector, and you can really customize it to just show you the fields that are relevant to you. That's one of the big goals of this section where we go through figuring out how to manage your tasks, is that you come up with a solution for you. Maybe you like time estimates and you like defer dates, but you don't care about flags, or whatever your recipe is for OmniFocus. Then you can customize this inspector to just show you that stuff. But before we move on, I want to show you one feature with inspectors that I use all the time and I think you want to have under your belt. And that's managing multiple tasks. While the new version of OmniFocus gives you a lot of ways to manage tasks easily, like you can see here, I have this 30-minute estimate we just did a minute ago. What if I wanted to change that to 1 hour? I'm just going to type 1H, and then you'll see it changed to 1 hour, both here and in the inspector. But what if I wanted to take several items? So I'm going to hold down the Command key and select multiple items here and give them all a 1 hour estimate. Well, normally, if you went through and did each one, that would be a little tedious. You've got to click on each one. But with 4 of them selected, I can then just go into the inspector and type 1 hour, and you'll see each one of them has now a 1 hour estimate. And that applies to any property you find in the inspector, whether it be tags, project names, due dates, defer dates, the whole enchilada. You can go through here and apply multiple items or properties to multiple tasks using that inspector. And to me, that's a real great feature of that inspector. Otherwise, I don't keep it open often. I usually hit Option Command I to hide it, to keep the database a little simpler. And I like to manage properties in individual tasks. We'll get to that more as we go through the course, but that's one of the real nice benefits of this version 4 of OmniFocus, is they really went out of their way to make it easy for you to manage your tasks without having to open the inspector. I've been teasing the fact in some of the prior videos that the inspector isn't as important in OmniFocus as it used to be. And that's what I'm going to explain in this video, because now the outline view in OmniFocus is way more powerful. You can control so many factors of your tasks and projects right in the outline view, and I'd like to show you how to do that in this video. I've got OmniFocus here on the screen. On the left side is the Mac app, and on the right is the iPhone app. We're going to get to the iPhone app in just a minute. Right now I want to focus on the Mac app, and you can see it is in what they call fluid layout. The outline is showing you specific properties of a task right in the outline, and that's what I was referring to earlier. This makes it much less necessary to pull the inspector out. In fact, I don't have the inspector showing right now. So this fluid outline is excellent, but before we get to that, I want to go back a little bit in time. I'm going to open up the system settings here, or the OmniFocus settings, that is, and you can see here under the layout button, it is currently selected for fluid. I'm going to switch that to columns. Now, this is the historical layout that we got with OmniFocus, where you've got the task name and then you've got these columns, like a spreadsheet, laying them out. You can actually change those columns if you want. Like I'm going to take tags out. I'll just untag that. I'll just unhook that. There we go. Tags are gone. And let's say I want to add estimated duration. I'll click that and you'll see duration just got added. So you can adjust those columns as you want. To be perfectly honest, I don't use this view much anymore. I find that fluid is much more useful for me. So I'm going to hit Command comma to bring it back, and we're going to go to fluid design. And before moving on, I should mention that the column design only works on the Mac. They don't have column design on iPhone or iPad. So that's something that if you like, you want to primarily use it on your Mac. That's the only place it's available. So I'm back in settings. I've switched it to fluid now. And fluid is that design I was just showing you, where it hides the items until you select them and then it puts them up. But you'll see here there's a couple showing up even though I don't have the selected task. For instance, this 1 hour duration is showing up on buy a new garden hose. The deferred date is showing up on that first item. But when I select it, you know there's a lot more data in there, but there's only a couple things showing up. And this is a really ingenious little design they added. I'm going to go back to the settings in OmniFocus, and you'll see that for fluid defaults, there's two settings here. One says set display fields, and the other one says set editing fields. Well, what's happening is anything that's marked as a display field shows at all times. So I'm going to hit the display fields. You'll see, for instance, duration is checked off. Now, if I uncheck it, it's going to disappear from these unselected items. So I'll go ahead and uncheck duration, and you see that it just disappeared. I'll check it again, and it'll go back, and I'll uncheck, it'll disappear. So what you're doing with these two settings is the top one sets what you see no matter what. In my case, I like to see the project, the tags, the defer date, and the due date. Those are the ones that are key to me. If they exist, I want to see them there. And this item, for instance, you can see it has a defer date and a due date, and I see that whether it's selected or not. However, the editing fields gives you the ability to add even more. Now, you'll see some are here by gray because we've selected them in display fields. If they're in display fields, they're automatically editable. But if I want the estimated duration to be available when I select it, then I check this box. And I'm very liberal with this in my own selection because I feel like if I edit it, I want to be able to edit anything. So I've set a bunch of them for editing fields, just a few of them as display fields. Going back to this first one, for instance, it does not have an estimated duration. I'm going to go ahead and put 30 minutes on that, 30M, and now it has a duration. And that's showing up when I'm editing it, when the item's selected, but then when I click on another one, you'll see that disappears. And then it goes back to just showing the display fields, the defer and the due date. And you can do that to any one of these you want to. I'll put a duration on this one. Again, we'll say 2 hours, 2H. And again, that will disappear because it's not set as a display field. And just kind of to send the point home, I'm going to go in here and select now display the estimated duration. And you'll see that field will show up in each one. So my recommendation is think about the fields that you want to always be able to see, and think about the fields that you always want to have the ability to edit, and set these two fields accordingly. But the good news is once you get that all done, this stuff is really available to you right here in OmniFocus in the outline view. So no longer do you have to be fiddling over in the inspector all the time to make changes. You can do it right in the item. I've got a separate video coming up to show you all the great keyboard shortcuts for this, but just to tease you with one of them right now, like I'm going to move the arrows down to a selected item, and I'm going to hit Shift D, which I know puts me in the defer date field, and I'll just type 1W for 1 week and hit return, and now I've set a deferred date in 1 week. You can move through this stuff really quickly once you get all those keyboard shortcuts down, but that's coming to you in a later video. Now going over on the iPhone, you can see we get the exact same behavior. I'm scrolling through right now. I'm going to go ahead and hit the More button in the upper right corner, and then Settings, and then tap Layout. And once again, I have the ability to set display fields and edit fields. So let's say I always want to display the estimated time on the iPhone, because sometimes you have different needs for different devices. So we've got that already selected, but we never want to display the due date, so I'll unselect that. And I can finish that, and then I can go to the editing fields, and then I can add the due date for editing fields once an item is selected. You'll see that by default, it says mirror display field, so we need to turn that off. And then I can tap the due date to add it, and just for giggles, I'll add completion status as well. So then I can exit the layout, and you can see that I've got defer dates and durations for all the tasks that have them, but I don't have due dates. I know that first item does have a due date, so if I select it, it shows me the due date right there in line. So this whole idea of setting editable and displayable fields in the outline view in OmniFocus is really important. If you didn't nail this down once, watch the video one more time, because it's really going to give you wings as you start using OmniFocus. In fact, as we get deeper into the course and we get into custom perspectives, you can also set custom editable and display fields based on the custom perspective. And once again, once you get that down, everything gets a lot easier. One of the fundamental problems of any task manager is how to surface the data you need to see right now. And that's why perspectives are one of OmniFocus's killer features. With OmniFocus, you can dial up perspectives that give you your data exactly as you want. With the Pro version, the custom perspectives are particularly powerful. In this section, I'm going to show you what perspectives are, some of my favorite ones that are built in, then I'm going to show you how to build your own perspectives, and some of my own favorite custom perspectives. Just in case you haven't figured it out yet, I am a middle-aged man with an unhealthy adoration of Star Wars. I was 8 years old when the first movie came out, and it got me, and it's had me my whole life. And there's a great quote in the episode 5 of Star Wars where Yoda is talking to Luke, and he's trying to do something. He says, "I can't do it." And Yoda says, "No, do or do not. There is no try." And I decided to incorporate that into my primary perspective in OmniFocus because, yes, I'm a nerd. If you'd like, I could go get my lightsabers and show them to you, but let's just get on with it. So here I am in OmniFocus, and you can see there it is right there, do with Yoda on top of it. One thing you'll note about this perspective, if you go up to it, is it has a keyboard combination hooked up to it, Control Command 3. You do that actually in the perspective list. Whenever you have a custom perspective you really like and you want to use often, you can put a keyboard shortcut to it. You just click this box and then type it in. And what I've done is connected that keyboard shortcut to my Stream Deck, so I can just push a button on my Stream Deck at any time to pull up my do list. The other thing you'll note here is that there's a little star here. Sometimes they're empty and sometimes they're full. That puts them here in the perspective list in the sidebar. If I unclick that, you'll see that the do perspective just went away. You can also rearrange them if you want. You can drag them up and down and put them in whatever order you want here in this perspective view. But let's go to the do perspective. So there it is right there. This is my do list for today. And for me, these are the things that I don't have an option. They just need to get done today. I'm behind. I'm supposed to reply to this email a while ago. I haven't yet. And I've got an interview I'm doing tomorrow I need to prepare for, and the dog needs grooming. So that's a pretty short do list. And for me, on a daily basis, the do list is between 3 and maybe 12 items. Now let's take a look at the do perspective. I'll click on the view button. What's in this thing? Well, the first thing I did is I called it do. I put a period on it because I wanted to be declarative. And the color here is purple. I actually should probably match that color to Yoda, so that makes more sense. But you'll see this is the custom icon that I have uploaded, and I've talked about that in prior videos, and I'll talk about it again in future videos. But if you want to add a custom icon, just hit the custom button, search out a transparent PNG, and put it in. And I recommend you use something simple like this. Don't get overly complex imagery because this stuff is displayed pretty small and you want to keep it simple. So what is in my do perspective? Well, the first is a group of any conditions. So it can be any of the following. If it's on the bench, due soon, or flagged. Those are basically my three levels of priority. To me, the bench is priority 3, flagged is priority 2, and due soon is priority 1. But I want all of those to show up in the do list. So if I've marked it bench and it's available today, then I want to see it. And that's the next item here. Is it available? Yes. So this is all there really is to it. But I want to know a few items here. There is an all condition at the beginning. So I'm drawing from these two, any of the following. So bench, soon, or flagged, and available. And so I've got an all with two any's underneath it. Now, below that is a none, and that's just here while I'm recording this field guide, because I also have a folder here called Secret Lair that I've been sharing with you, particularly earlier in the course where we made a few tasks, and they've got priorities and flags, and they aren't actually priorities and flags, so I'm accepting them from the list. So long as they're not in the Secret Lair folder, and they're available, and they're any of these three statuses, then they show up in the do perspective. But the thing you want to know is the way this is built. It's all of these conditions need to be satisfied. So it has to be any of these, available, and not in the secret layer. Now, if I change that to any, then it would be crazy. It would not, it would get just a ton of tasks. But I don't want to do that. Like, in fact, I'm hanging up my Mac here. The wheel is spinning because it's grinding through my entire database because I just pushed that button. And you see a bunch of stuff showed up, even things that are already like done. So that's bad. We want to go back to all. So I click all, and then it goes through, it sorts it out again for me, and then we get that nice small list of just 3 items. And you'll note that I have kept this as a flexible list. I don't use flexible lists often. I actually like organization. So generally I use those. But with this one, it's usually small enough. I do kind of like going in and sorting them out. I hide the sidebar on the Mac. You can see that's already hidden here in the background, and I use custom fluid. So that is my do list. And every day, this is the thing that I really need to look at. This is my primary perspective. Now, it works in tandem with a few others that I'm going to show you in some future screencasts. But for me, every day, this is the stuff that I really want to get done. So throughout these videos, I've been talking about killer features like the boy who cried wolf. I talked about it with custom perspectives, and I talked about it with review. But I really feel like automation is the king of killer features with OmniFocus, because the developers of OmniFocus really take automation seriously. They allow you as the user to make the application do your bidding for you. And honestly, that's probably my favorite feature of OmniFocus. And the thing is, they haven't just stopped. Like, they've got shortcuts automation, but they also have automation that they wrote themselves called Omni Automation. I'm going to talk about that in this section as well. There's just a lot of ways to make this app do the hard work of task management and task creation for you. And once you figure that out, you can really harness it to make all of this a lot easier. So even if you've never been an automation fan or somebody who felt like you're highly technical, go through this section with me, because the Omni Group makes it really easy for anybody to automate. So let's get started. One of the easiest ways to get started automating with OmniFocus is OmniFocus Links. So one of the reasons why I'm so in favor of this idea is what I consider contextual computing, and that is being able to go to an application exactly where you need to in that application to do your work. So often applications dump you into some kind of general holding area where there's a lot of things uninvolved with what you're currently working on that intrudes with your focus, especially with a task manager. Almost always they open up in the inbox or some general view of all your tasks. Well, with these links, you're able to jump straight to the project you're working on and skip all of that. So it begins with the ability to link to individual tasks. So let's say I want to work on customer support. I've got a task here related to that. I can just right click on that and say copy as link. Then I'm going to go over here to Apple Notes. I've got a blank Apple Note here and paste that in. And now I've got a link back to that task. So I could close OmniFocus, click on that task, and you're going to see it jumps straight to that task in the appropriate project. I can also jump straight to a perspective. Like I'm going to right click on my forecast here and say copy link. And I'll go over to Apple Notes. I'm going to say OmniFocus forecast. Select the entire line, hit Command K, and paste it as a link. And now it's a little prettier. And I'll go ahead and close OmniFocus. You'll note that right now it's on the due perspective. If I click forecast, it's going to open it up in the forecast view and show me what I've got going on in my forecast for today. You can link to folders. So if you've got a folder about gardening, like we covered in an earlier video, I'll just right click on that and say copy as link. And I'll say gardening folder. And I'll paste the link again underneath it without embedding it. And now I'm going to move OmniFocus over to household. And then I'm going to click on gardening. And you'll see just jump to gardening, and it gave me just the gardening list. You can also click on tags and make them the source of a link. So let's say I've got a tag for field guide. Actually, let me get a tag that's got a little more populated for MacSparky here. I'm going to right click on that. You can see copy as link. MacSparky tag list has its own link. And now if I click on it, it goes straight to that. So you can see why I'm so excited about these links, because it gives you a way to contextually compute and use laser focus to get exactly where you need on your Mac, iPad, or iPhone in OmniFocus using a link. So take a minute, just practice this, get it under your fingers. All you have to do is right click on the target item and say copy as link, and you're good to go. By this point in the course, you've got a thorough understanding of the feature set and OmniFocus and the different ways you can put those tools to use. Defer dates, tags, flags, all that stuff is under your fingers. But the question is, how exactly are you going to use the system? Really what the question is how are you going to build your own system? OmniFocus has roots firmly implanted with getting things done. It was really a GTD app from the very beginning. I think they've even at some point had a quote from David Allen endorsing it, but it's really so much more than that, because OmniFocus gives you all the tools. No matter what it is you want your task management system to be, you can develop it to do that. It doesn't have to be GTD. It doesn't have to be any specific system. But in this section, what I'd like to do is show you some of the typical systems people use to hopefully give you a jumping off point. I'm going to go through several, and at the end, I'm going to show you my own system and how it has evolved over the years and kind of my philosophy about how I use OmniFocus. So let's get started. Okay, so that wraps it up for the OmniFocus 4 Field Guide free sample. If you'd like to learn more, head over to learn.macsparky.com where you can purchase the course. You can get the Plus edition with the webinar series or the standard edition without. The course is 7+ hours of content over 90 videos. And like I said, with the Plus edition, you get that webinar series where we're going to go over 6 weeks into a deep dive in task management theory, strategies, and get even more out of OmniFocus. The goal with this course is nothing less than to make you a task management ninja. So please go check it out if you're interested. Learn.macsparky.com, and thank you for your time.